Well, a lot of times you go to properties that are surrounded by ag, and they're never going to take all of that ag out. We strongly encourage folks to whatever they can put into wildlife habitat versus ag is going to be better. That's a fact. Now, if your ag is the only ag in the area, you own several hundred acres, then having that ag land is going to be a benefit to your whitetail habitat. But most of the time, I'd say almost every time, your land is surrounded by ag or parcels with ag. So the ag on your land doesn't do anything. Now, being in an ag region is awesome. But so in this case, we're dealing with about 35 acres that the 30 to 35 acres that the landowner can actually manage and manipulate to change his deer habitat. And a lot of times we get these kind of clients, and they're saying, what to do, because they're going to pull some parcel or some ag land out, put it towards wildlife habitat. And if they do that, there's a cost to that. It's expensive. They don't want to do it wrong, and they want to make sense of it. So this is one I thought really made sense for a client I had down in Ohio, and I wanted to kind of break it down for you. This is the current drawing right here, and you see the design I came up with. I want to go over it just real quick. Here's a total of 80 acres. This front 4 or 5 acres is a cattle pasture right up here. So there's nothing. That's actually fenced in beef cattle. That's gone. There's actually a barn down in this corner. You get down in this bottom right here, it's the one thick area of the property. Some areas too thick, meaning that there's so much undergrowth. There's a lot of multiflora rows. Deer can't go through it. And I even asked him, have you seen deer not go through that? And it's funny because the does and fawns can slip their way through, and he saw a big buck, 180-inch buck the one time, coming down through this thick area, and he's up top looking down at it, hoping it'd come by him. It didn't. It's following this doe through the thick area. It actually got into an area where it started to get tangled, and it backed completely out 30, 40 yards and went way around this location to continue following that doe that was in heat. So there can be wasted area, and that happened in here. So you take that thick area, well, that's great, it's thick, it can hold deer down there, but it's so thick that it's not holding deer. And so something has to be done with that. At the same time, that hunter access right now, a large portion of the hunter access comes right through here to get to the other side. There's an access road that comes down here. So with that hunter access, you only need to use it once or twice, and those deer are buggered out of there. Then they don't come back, especially the older bucks. So as the season moves on, he sees fewer and fewer older bucks, and it's because they're getting used to this thick area. Even though there's not a lot in the area, there's not a lot of woods in there, it's a lot of ag that it's infringed on, and those mature bucks don't care if that's the only thick habitat in the area. They're going to go find somewhere else to live. And when they go find somewhere else to live, they go across property borders, they go exponentially, they're exposed to more hunters, and that means the overall age structure is pushed down. Those bucks just can't get to an older age because they cross so many boundaries, forever exposing themselves to more hunters every border they cross. And you get over to this end of the property. This right here, this line going through, is a gas well line, so it's open. It's just open brush. It's field grass. There's nothing there. There's no cover. And then it's flanked on either side all the way over to this point right here with just open hardwoods, open, mature, high overstory, see right through it, hardwoods. And you can imagine in this spot right over here, we're only talking about in this entire configuration right here, about 8 to 10 acres. So really easy to see through, no deer can ever live there. And then that's right adjacent to the worst hunting pressure. So what do the deer do? When they're pressured down here, then those deer run north. They go through this open ag. This happens to be a lower area. They go through by the industrial park, and then there's a big woods about a quarter mile north, one of the biggest woods in the area. So the deer just lace across that ag field, and they're gone. And they know that, especially the mature bucks, they're not going up into this thick areas because it's hunter pressured, and they really don't have enough for them. So poor access, no depth of cover or core area that a mature buck can call its home, let alone deer. They're always infringed on because the heaviest portion of the cover on the property is infringed on. And then this is open woods over here. It doesn't hold anything. So there's really overall no depth of cover, because even though you have a food plot here and a food plot here, like I mentioned down here, that the food beds deer off of the land. So the food here beds deer up in this thick area to the north on another person's property. The food right here beds deer here down to the south. And even down to the south there, it's open timber on that neighbor's property. It's only about 8 to 10 acres of open timber. So there's really not much for deer to bed in down there either, because they're not bedding that much except for a few does and fawns and a couple small bucks on the current landowner's property. I look at something like this and I think, man, there's so much we can do because it's in a great area, and this easily can be turned all around in just 1 year. And part of that's there's no AM and PM stand locations. What's AM and PM when there's no deer really staying on the property? You don't have that depth. If you don't have depth where you can say deer are feeding here, does and fawns are bedding here, young bucks here, old bucks are here, you have enough depth to have that, then you don't have morning stands, because your morning hunts are always back by those buck core areas. That's the back side of the movement. And those evening stands are back closer to your food source. Here, there's really just nothing, because if you're sitting at a food source in a blind right here looking over that food plot, they're coming from this thick cover up here. They're coming from down here sometimes, but it's very, very random. They literally have to be chasing a doe. They're not going to be out there. And that's why late season, there's just hardly any deer out there at all. We'll mention there's no water holes. Need to change that, because in an area like this, there is a stream down in the bottom here, but all of this area up top here, it's not supported by water in any way. So that's a missed opportunity for having a money deer stand and being able to count on that deer stand all the time. At the same time, one of the last things here, this entire woods edge, all the way around, is open and exposed right to the hardwoods. That means a deer that's 50 yards in has no cover on the outside edge, meaning they want to be in that 50 to 100 yards into the woods. And that means that first 50 yards where deer can sit and look right out into the fields is wasted deer habitat. So not only the open hardwoods here, the open power line or gas line, utility line right away, then you start taking out 50 yards all the way around the woods. That 50 yard totally takes out this area, but you take it out of here, you're left with this thin strip down the middle, and that's where there's hunter access right now. So a lot of things needed to be changed, and I look at this like a kid in a candy store, because boy, big changes can be made for this year. This is something that takes years. I don't like when a habitat manager say, well, it's something that takes time. No, it doesn't. It takes one season, because most of the time, the lowest hole in the bucket all the time is how you hunt the land and hunting strategy. So if you change a hunting strategy on most properties, all but the top 3% of all properties, then you can easily make changes, and that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, is just changing hunting strategy, let alone everything else you can do. There's a lot this landowner can do, and we'll talk about it right now. So a few things doing different. I want this area down here, instead of being the most open area, I want it to be the thickest area of cover, really good cover, secure holding cover right next to that neighbor, because then when that neighbor comes in, I want these deer to run into my client property, and I want them to stop. I don't want them to just run right through. And when they only have 80 yards of open timber to run right through to get into this ag land and just keep going, they do that. There's nowhere literally for them to stop. So I want the property to absorb deer like a sponge. I want them to go in there, turn left or right, not just keep running right through. So a few things. This area right here, I talked to the landowner, and it's critical for him to take back this ag land right here. So now we get this whole chunk to play with. In fact, I want him to draw that line right up like this. So that gives him this inside area up here. I want that all taken back for the landowner. Now down here, he has a 1 acre food plot. I want him to get rid of that food plot, shrink that down a little bit. You can see on the drawing, I want him to shrink down this food plot drastically. So it's just a little hunting plot, which still gives him enough cover to have switchgrass all the way around this. I want him to develop a larger plot up in here, taking back some of this ag land. So we'll take some of that ag land back. Again, we're going to draw a line just right like this. And now you have room for cover on the outside, switchgrass, which is all in the yellow. You can go around there and, oh, by the way, we can stick a little hunting plot back here on this flat in the woods. I want them to get rid of these stands. The stand that's on the inside right here, get it out here into the corner. So we just make this stand and put it in this location right here. Now we'll make this bigger food right here, smaller food, and then that gives us the opportunity to have a couple small hunting plots here or here. There's a lot of people look at that and say, well, let's take this all over for an actual big food plot down here. Well, then you're just sticking all those deer that go to that food plot down on the neighbor with the worst hunting pressure. It'd be a terrible, terrible idea. In fact, this right here, there's a property quote manager, I just say it in quotations, told him to put this big 1 acre food plot right here in the first place. Well, that blocked him off from even getting back and forth on the south border because he's always bumping deer coming into that food plot. He had no other place he could count on those deer being. And then it's putting deer down on the neighbors that he can't hunt for 95% of the daylight. So, you know, I felt bad for the guy because he got some bad advice. But bottom line is, this entire area right here can be turned into cover. Very easy to do because you can surround that in switchgrass. The switchgrass can be up to 4 feet this year. You start adding diversity pockets. You can surround that area in switch to begin with. Add pockets of switch out here. Allow early successional growth to come in between. Add diversity pockets like we do here with shrubs and trees from big rock trees. You can add pockets of conifer. Do whatever you want out there. But bottom line is you want it to hold deer. Then you take these open hardwoods. Perfect for a timber cut. A great opportunity to get a forester in there and a logger, and he has the ability to do that. He has friends in the industry, so let alone if you have neighbors, friends, they can get a hold of. But so this entire area right here will now turn into actual holding cover for deer, just with a nice select cut. Get that a whole lot thicker than it is right now. So then that gives you ability. You can add a little hunting plot down here. You know, right in here. He can come in, hunt from this outside. And it starts to give you a more huntable aspect where now, let's change that. So now that since there's a lot bigger food plot up here, a couple small plots up down here, he can change his access. So the access can now more effectively, he can more access along this line because a lot of those deer are in these bigger food plots. He can also access through the industrial park up here and get in. And then he can also, because it's super thick down in this bottom, and because he's holding more deer in this middle, I'd rather see him spook deer along this edge that are going to the neighbor, but he can use this access along here too. And he can use that during the daylight because he can go through that really thick bottom. The deer can't see him from more than 10 feet away. Leave it in multiple rows. Leave it in that really thick area. It has a lot of down timber in there. So just leave it junked up and give yourself a tunnel to go right up to that top, and you can get through there very quickly. The whole idea now the depth starts to extend this way. You have big food right here, shrink into smaller food as it goes this way, till your best cover is along your highest amount of hunting pressure. You can add some water holes. These are at higher elevations, so you can add water right here. There's a really thick corner, you can add water right here. Can also add water outside of this corner right here. So I like stands like this where you can have a water hole here, and then you can have a stand location where you can shoot into the food plot or you can shoot in the water hole, and a buck never needs to step out into that food plot. Those two can be 40 yards apart. You can shoot water hole here, food plot over there. In a small setting like that, I really like that because that buck can cruise around this heavier timber, hit that water hole, never even need to step out into that food plot for a shot. You never want to add that water hole to the food plot because they'll hit that water hole any time of the day. Typically they're hitting that food plot in the last hour, half hour of daylight, or maybe a little bit in the beginning. So you add the water to that food plot. You don't turn that food plot into an all day stop. You keep it the same. You just diminish the use of the water hole. You make that water hole now late in the day, early day stop, and that's it. So those water hole spots are perfect. There's a creek system that runs down through here, low. So keeping the water up high, you're keeping it in the dry movement. And who cares if there's that creek down the bottom, because a deer all the way over here doesn't want to go all the way down, hit the creek, and come all the way back up. Now the inside here, this multiflora row, so I want to grind it down and kill it. So all this area, you'll take pockets like this, where they're non-navigable. You can't get through there, deer can't get through there. Start taking these thick bottom areas, grind them out, and then connect them all. Now deer can utilize this entire area. They can go back and forth to common areas where they're traveling right now, and they can use that entire bottom. Notice we're not doing this right up here because I want it to remain thick so he can use that access. I don't want deer up there. Just want that single trail for him to access going through there, and that's the only trail that you can even navigate. And because of all the multiflora rows and the thick cover and the down timber, that's very possible. So in the end, it gives you a lot of stand location options. You can run deer trails that connect water holes to food sources back and forth. Gives you a great stand location here, stand location, stand down here, the one up here, over a water hole here. Get one that's a dual purpose between food plots right here, stand location here. It starts giving you, because this is a bank right here, you can have a stand location looking over this water hole and actually blow your scent off that bank in the morning hours, and you're scent free, and you can access that by coming along the new access route on the south right here. So we can get a lot of new stand locations down here, even one down here. You get one down here now because you're hunting deer and turning on the inside of your property and not waiting for deer to come from the outside in. So you take a property that currently, as it sits, it's an outside in property, meaning the deer are spooked off the property. There's not much reason for the deer to live on the property during the daylight, even though you have food plots. Those food plots are putting deer, making them live during the daylight on the neighbors. You flip that all around. So these food plots are drawing deer from the inside of your property. These little hunting plots are just funneling deer around from the inside of your property. And now it becomes an inside out property, meaning the deer leave the property after dark instead of waiting for the deer to come on the land right at dark. Hope that makes a lot of sense. But I'm excited for this client. It's not a lot of property. It spreads out over a long distance, but there's a lot of changes they can make just to how it's hunted, let alone food plot positioning. Even here, just taking back that ag land, planting that in switch. Around that opening, I'd probably plant 20 feet of switch, 20 feet wide, maybe 50 feet on the field edge. You'd put switch along this entire field edge so the deer feel more comfortable being closer to that outside edge. Same with down here. The inside, those pockets, that area is only about 3 to 4 acres. So you could have an 1/8 of an acre pocket of switch, a 1/4 acre pocket of switch on this inside, and then let the rest grow up in early successional growth. In fact, those early successional growth areas, I'd kill it with clethodim, so there's no other grass there. Because if it's not switchgrass, it's not standing up all winter. It's useless in this area anyways, and it's not a food source, any of that grass. So get rid of the grass, let broadleafs come in, shrubs, trees, whatever it might be. And if you want to just convert it in the future, plant pollinator blends. Flowers, forbs, forages, clovers, prairie clovers, milkweed, that combination, so that the deer have browse, but they have to have that base amount of cover, and that's why you're surrounding the whole thing in switch. In fact, this area, let's say it's 4 acres, you're going to end up with about 2 acres of switch. The rest is going to be early successional growth, diversity pockets, pollinator blends, whatever your heart imagines. But now you give the deer structure to actually bed in there, and it takes 2 years at the most, because in 2 years, if you chemically control your switch and you follow the steps that we teach on this channel, then you're going to have 6 to 8 foot high switch. Even by the end of the first year, you could have 3 to 4 foot high switch, very thick, and enough grass that'll actually hold deer out there, where they currently just run right through a half mile to the north, to the woodlot to the north. So a lot that can be done in this property right here to change it, and I can't wait. I know this is one of those properties we'll hear good things, because he was very motivated. He wants to get this stuff done. He's excited about it. I'm excited about it for him. He's one of those clients. I tell clients all the time, I have higher expectations for my clients than my clients even have, because I've seen what can be done in an area like this where there's already big bucks around and there's not a lot of cover, and he's managing the cover right. He's managing his access, and he provides this core area now that extends all the way through here. And by core area, meaning that's an area where hunter scent, sound, or sight is not getting into. There is no acreage right now where hunter sight, sound, scent is not getting into on his property as it currently sits. We're going to change that. So now instead of 0 acres out of 35, he'll have 28 acres out of 35, where deer can call home and not have any kind of hunting pressure. And oh, by the way, it's good habitat and it's flanked by good food. It's something that you can develop an entire hunt with, and I expect him to get a lot of really good months of hunting in on a parcel like this, and really big bucks to come in a short period of time. It's not going to take a long time. He'll make major changes without a lot of work just for this hunting season. Everyone, thanks for watching to the end of the video. I really want you to check out whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, Pure Wildlife Blends. There's so much we have to offer you. You know, if you never buy anything from us or hire us to come to your land, that's okay. We're still going to be putting out all this free content to try to help you out. I want to put a smile on your face. I want you to have a great hunt. But from our food plot seed blends to books to web classes to hiring us, we have lots of stuff to offer on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com and Pure Wildlife Blends. Make sure you check it out. The links are in the description.